Welcome to Lattes Art, presented by J Squared Atelier, where creativity meets conversation. I'm your host, James William Moore, and today's episode delves into a topic as profound as it is complex: violence, trauma, and art. Joining us is the insightful John Joseph Contreras Romero, an expert in using art as a therapeutic tool in mental health practices. We'll explore how art provides a safe space for expressing pain, healing trauma, and rebuilding identity, offering not only personal solace, but also a window into societal issues. Grab your favorite espresso drink and settle in. This is an important conversation you won't want to miss. Thanks for joining us today. I'm excited to get into this conversation. We have John joining me, and we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff. But before we get into it, in case you're not familiar with John, I'm going to give him a second. First, John, thank you for being here. Tell us, who are you? Why do you do what you do? What is your background?
Thanks for having me on the show, James. I appreciate you. So I'm a second-generation Mexican-American, first-generation college student in my family. Also a first-gen military veteran of my family as well. I grew up from immigrant parents, both from Mexico, one from Guadalajara, Jalisco, and the other one from Michoacan, Mexico. Don't ask me about the city my dad's from. It was just like, it's just a general area. But yeah. But yeah, that's how I am. And I went to school a little later than a couple of folks. So I graduated from UCSC or UC Santa Cruz. Back in 2019 with my BA in art and my minor in education, and immediately went into the MFA program at San José State University in Spatial Arts. So
you were kind of old to the school game like I was.
Yeah. I mean, I was like, 23, 24 going back to school. So
whatever. I was in my 40s.
Yeah.
It's funny. A couple of them called me Mom. Oh. So you talk about the cultural background that you have. You talk about being in the armed services. Mm-hmm. How does all of that come to your art?
I mean, it comes in so many different ways. I mean, just growing up, just totally, I'm trying to think of the word, but like just engulfed inside of like mainstream, like, music to like movies to all these other things, right? Just like growing up in a very full home. I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers, and immediately like seeing how fast we came up in terms of like wealth. I just remember like always having a dirty house, and then suddenly the dirty house was just always getting cleaner like every year, you know what I mean? And it was just people were suddenly like in school or then going off to school and like coming back, but then moving out. I digress. But yeah, so how all that kind of culminates into my art, I mean, I would say like I was raised in a very diverse neighborhood. We had like Polynesian people, we had a really strong, Mexican American or just Latin American community, as well as like a large black population within, we called it East Menlo. It's Menlo, but it's, we say East Menlo because it was totally different from what West Menlo or Menlo Atherton looked, Granted, it wasn't like East Palo Alto, but I think East Palo Alto was like the murder capital and back in like the early 90s or 80s, late 80s. So we kind of shared some of that, like that strife and whatnot. So then kind of coming up, it wasn't so weird how it is now, right? Like you can't we totally grew up in a way. Like I had to talk to my neighbors one time, and I was like, "Why'd you have us speak that way? Like, what was you guys could have told us, hey, don't use those specific words and all this stuff, things I wouldn't say now in my adult year, just being educated and but sometimes I slip up. But so how that culminates into my art, I try to really delve into the self, into who I am, and so so there will be some works that you'll see. It's like super okay, this is. Like, you see a nopale, or a prickly pear, and you're like, that's totally about my culture. You know what I mean? Like, you see that, and I think of like the Mexican-American flag with the eagle, right? Or just even, if I'm making something about war, like why am I making like this, AVAB, Bushmaster round, you know what I mean? That's like, or explosive round. That's about the military, or if it's about something that's like culminating between, my childhood, like a Winnie the Pooh sculpture and how I can bring that into, the current times and just speak about like the idea of me not knowing about the world and then just being introduced to that and what kind of shock value that gave to me and probably doesn't give to other people. But anyways, yeah. Sorry, I thought it was a little too much. That was a lot. Try to piece it all together.
It's never too much. When you're talking about like the space that you grew up in and there was violence that was in the vicinity.
Yeah.
And you're talking about this cultural background that you have with your family and the families that were in the neighborhood that you grew up in.
Yeah.
You then leave this space and you went into the armed services.
I did, yeah.
Was that as an escape from that neighborhood? Was that as a way for you to find yourself? Was that a chance to get an education?
Yeah.
What took you from that point to armed services?
I mean, there's so many reasons. I mean, like you kind of hit on a lot of them. It was just like either getting away from the neighborhood or even just getting away from what I thought was my neighborhood, what I thought was my life, and leaving the friends that I had, and trying to like do something more for myself. I couldn't see myself working at Starbucks, my whole life. And when I did try to apply to other jobs with Starbucks, like 3 years experience at Starbucks or 2 years experience with like a whole bunch of other food experience to a corporate job, they weren't accepting me. Just getting away from that and trying to improve my life. Also just like all the benefits that came from it, benefits that I kind of see, I kind of don't see because I got out with a general under honorable rather than honorable. Trying to seek something bigger and better than me, it felt worthless doing what I was doing,
Well, could it even be considered that you were creating a new you?
Yeah, I mean, essentially.
It's a new artwork.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think it was creating a new me just from I wanted to meet new people. I wanted to see different things, and I wanted like maybe I was wanting structure too, right? There's all these things that I didn't have, right? Like dad left at like around 9 years old, kind of leaving like week to week or month to month, year to year, and then eventually like it was just me like waving at him after not seeing him for like a year. And he's driving his truck and I'm just, on my skateboard. And I'm like, Dad, what's up? Bob, what's going on? And so like, it was just like, maybe he was even trying to find a father figure kind of deal. And it really just made me like learn. It wasn't like the best experience per se in the military, but it was definitely an experience. It was very short-lived too, but I'm super grateful for like learning all that because I wanted to see, wanted to see that world, but also wanting to use my experiences as like a voice, for other people to learn from or to gain some type of knowledge or even just connect with humanity. Oddly, like going into politics, all these things, or like, I don't know, like, just.
Well, and it's, you say connecting with humanity, and art does that.
It does.
Right?
Yes,
art
yes,
brings us
yes.
to our human side.
Mm-hmm.
I want to stay on this path with the armed services for a second. I believe it was Marines that you... Okay.
Yeah, United States Marine Corps.
And you were in Afghanistan.
I did, yeah. I was in, OEF 12.1 is what that was like the title. You know what I mean? Like, I think everyone gets like a different title. Yeah, I was in Afghanistan.
So I'm going to now jump forward because I had the privilege of seeing some of the sculpture that you created and some of the objects of art that seemed to, from the front end, be telling us a story, but there felt to be more to them than just the simple story. And the one that moved me the most was your Christopher Robin piece.
Yeah.
Can you describe that and talk us through that and what got you there?
Totally. We're in Palo Alto right now, which is pretty funny. So my whole, it's like a long story, so it's fine that we have the time. So my mom had been cleaning houses for folks, because, of course, she's an immigrant, and, not only was she doing that, she was cleaning at night, whatever. But she like cleaned houses for folks here in Palo Alto, and I just remember going to their house like really young. I was like 5 or 6. I was a sweet little kid, you know what I mean? I was always quiet and shy, but I was like, oh, you got that charm to you, people would say. Their house was just filled with Winnie the Pooh. I'm talking about like from the china, the fine china, the fine bowls, right? Like to like the glassware, to the to the stuffed animals going on top of like the stairs. And this was all like Wonderland to me, right? I mean, from the dirty house to this very clean house that my mom cleans up for. And just seeing all that, you know, and I just remember even going into Charles's like study, and just I remember like looking at the Winnie the Pooh, and then his studies right to the left. And in his study, I remember it just being like, it wasn't like dark or gloomy, but it had that like dark essence with like the dark oak wood, the books, the games on the table, you know what I mean? All these things. So fast forward, you know what I mean, to the Winnie the Pooh. You know, I went into the military, and you know, the funny thing that people don't know is that like some of the people that my mom cleaned houses for were part of the armed services, like Charles. Charles was he was a pilot, you know, during Korea, and I think Vietnam too. It's just funny how all that kind of connected. So when I decided to create this Winnie the Pooh characters, I wanted to really give like what happened to me, or I wanted to give this shock. Yeah, like this shock of seeing a dead body. You know, I decided to use the Winnie the Pooh characters just because I thought that would be interesting, you know, just to have like Winnie the Pooh see a dead Christopher Robin, and then I try to like piece it together. Of course, just talking about like my CO, Christopher K. Rabel, Colonel Christopher K. Rabel. You get promoted when you die. Yeah, just thinking about his body, you know, being delivered basically by like 6 other Marines, having him on a stretcher, and how he was like, you know, quickly breathing through the cloth. But my initial shock of like, damn, who was that? You know, like who could it have been? It was like, could it have been like really one of my close friends? But, you know, when we found out that it was like, you know, our lieutenant colonel, you know, our commanding officer, it really hit me, I think, because I had just seen him like 2-3 hours ago. And it was in passing, you know what I mean? I respected him. It's like, it's rank. And, you know, I was like a E3, Lance Corporal. Yeah, I just seen him 3 hours ago, and you know, I was like, "Hey, sir," you know, because like we had that relationship where like I could like kind of be myself, but I'm still like, oh, Steph, that's the lieutenant colonel, like, you know what I mean? And I was just like, "Oh, hey, sir, like, how's it going? You know, like, how's the day? How was the flight?" He was like, "Hey, you know, just another day, Contreras." And so, you know, and indeed, it was definitely not another day, you know.
So you have this experience. You're in the middle of this war that people are dying. And you are dealing with now this death of this individual. Yeah. Is using Christopher Robin and using Winnie the Pooh and those kinds of characters, was that to take you back to a time that was safe?
Yes, no, yes, and no. It was, so I added those. Yes, I definitely added those elements, like, because when you watch like Winnie the Pooh, you know, they're just having like a good time in the woods. You know what I'm saying? Like they're like either like looking at like, they call them poo sticks in the show, right? You know, they're like looking over and they're looking at all the sticks float down, and you know, they're just going through like little things here and there, but it's so innocent. You know, it's like to the naked eye, right? It's so innocent. It's this like beautiful childhood that he's imagining, that Christopher's imagining. And so when I decided to use that conjunction with, you know, Christopher laying down between my Lieutenant Colonel Rabel, Christopher laying down, that connection seemed to grow the more I studied into the actual creation of Winnie the Pooh, which is like A.A. Milne and I think H.C. Hunter, who was the illustrator, and just thinking about who those people were. And so it was really interesting to find out that they were veterans. And so once I saw that, I started like really like, because there was always this talk about like psychological elements or like mental health, you know, within the characters. Like, oh, like Rabbit has OCD, and like, you know, Eeyore's depressed, you know, Piglet is like anxiety, and all these little things here and there. But then realizing like, you know, who A.A. Milne was, why he created the 100 Acre Woods and Winnie the Pooh, it was to help his actual son, Christopher Robin, understand the world after the events of World War I. Just thinking about that, and then now you're looking at the characters a lot differently, because you're like, oh, interesting. Like, you know, what was happening during World War I or even after World War I? Like, what was the feeling like? You know, you had a lot of people like sad or like depressed, you know, homeless veterans. You got Eeyore, right? And you have all these other things, like things that I was like really look into like, you know, like Piglet, totally like soldier's heart. If a leaf falls right by Piglet and it makes a certain noise or there's a shadow, he's ready. He's like on the ground shaking. You have some of my other favorite ones to talk about is like, you know, you have Tigger, and he's jumping all around, but once he gets sad, oh my gosh, everyone stops, you know, and they're all like, it's crazy. Like I think of like the cartoon little movie that they had, and like I think Rabbit was like, "That's right, you can't hop anymore, Tigger. Like if you hop, that's it. You said it, you promised it." And he's like, "That means I can't hop." And like the facial expressions, like they so kill you. But like he's like on opioids. He's on uppers, right? And that was what's happening during and after that time of World War One. And you think of other characters, right? Just really quick, it's like Rabbit. You think of rabbits. Aren't rabbits abundant in colonies and things like that? But it's just a solo rabbit. Right, and so they're so fixated on just gardening because maybe that's the only thing that keeps them calm, right? And then you have like Kanga and Roo. There's no dad, so it's like this whole veteran community within the story of Winnie the Pooh, and how like it just connects with the rest of the world and how you're supposed to like treat one another. It's so fascinating, right? Like I don't know, I trip out thinking about it because I think of like new things. So I use Winnie the Pooh for me, just because Christopher Robin saw him as a best friend, but I kind of saw like Christopher as like a friend, if not like I know a higher up, my lieutenant colonel, the commanding officer of the whole VMA 211. But it was the way he treated me and everyone else. It was like, yeah, like there was a connection. Winnie the Pooh, of course, like he has like traumatic brain injury. That's why he never really remembers like certain sentences. Sometimes I'll get that way if I'm like overthinking. I'm like, man, what was I gonna say? And like you'll see Winnie the Pooh on the log. He's like, think. I have to do this, right? Like he's like really trying to process his thoughts after like possibly like a traumatic event.
With these ideas that these characters have these personality traits that you could see in your platoon, in your group,
right,
that we can see throughout history, through the wars we've come through, that these are the effects of these people that are coming back.
Right.
Was this piece something that you were doing as a healing process then?
Absolutely. I think I added like eucalyptus leaves just because like surrounding my neighborhood, if you don't know the history of eucalyptus leaves, you can totally look that up. But surrounding my whole neighborhood school was just these giant eucalyptus trees. And like if no one ever came to clean it up, you know what I'm saying? Because it's these Menlo Parks. So like you have like this abundance and we roll our bikes through them, we run through them, and even just the dust lifting up, you can smell that, And so just to mix that, I wanted to kind of fool, of course, the viewer. Like when they came in, they're like, oh, playing, you know what I mean? Like the smell threw you off, right? Because it's so like, it's like woodsy, it's like, it's eucalyptus leaves. I mean, it has like all these healing properties, right? Some people, you can cut a branch and hang it in your shower, have a steam eucalyptus shower, and it like does something to your senses and all these other things. But then there's some other undertones, right? That kind of affect my life, right? Like such as like colonization. Why did we bring these eucalyptus trees here, right? There was a reason, because they were growing super fast and we thought we could build with them, but no, there's no way you can build with them. And now they're like a hazard. It's like, as soon as you light one up, they all light up. So many negatives or pros and cons to these things, right? But anyways, just going back to that, it was a way for me to explain to people like what happened to me. I think explaining it in the eyes of a child as best as I could, my own personal eyes, was freeing, but there's always something missing. You know what I mean? There's always more that you can say.
So that the audience has a visual of this, you did an installation of sculpture that was a Winnie the Pooh that stood 3.5 feet tall, 4 feet tall.
Yeah.
And he was looking down, and there was a Christopher Robin that was appropriately sized, but he was laying down.
Yeah.
And they were in this gallery space that you had covered the floor with those eucalyptus leaves.
Yeah.
But there was another object that was in this installation, right? And this was the piece that brought it to you. What was that other object?
The other object, it was a pop gun, like an old wooden like PVC pipe tied to like a string and the cord pop gun. And I got a couple of questions like from that. They were like, oh, like are they just playing? Are they like what happened? Did he shoot himself? Did Winnie the Pooh shoot him? Like, and I was like, oh no, like like it was so funny because like I think I had like a professor go in there with their kids, and even the kids were like, is something wrong with Christopher? like, it felt so bad, but like, you know, like.
But there's a reality to what you presented.
Yeah, yeah.
And you made the comment that you wanted to use a child's story to make this approachable.
Right.
Because there's a reality that is in this that you're dealing with, that your compatriots in the service are dealing with.
Right.
There are those individuals of family that lost people that are dealing with this.
Right.
You chose a child's story to get the point across. Looking back, do you regret that because someone comes in and says, "Oh, did I read this wrong?"
Right. I don't, because like I think as an artist, once you put something out in the world, it's the world's, you know, and I can give my own piece to it. I think someone came up to me and they were like, "You realize you cannot ever go to China?" And I was like, "Why?" And it's like, because people think Xi Jinping is like similar to Winnie the Pooh, and I just was like, yeah, I guess that's not what I was going for, but yeah, I guess I can't go with China, right? Like I can't do anything like that. But no, I don't regret using the children, and I don't regret like putting the pop gun in there. And the reason for that, I think, is because you know, there's again layers to this piece, right? The whole issue between guns, gun violence, in general, and so it's almost insane to say, but the harsh reality is, like, you know, like you look at ghetto neighborhoods and there's guns everywhere. You know, people are shooting each other, killing each other, and then now suddenly we get people going into these schools and they're shooting people, and I hate to say, like, we kind of reap what we sow. You know what I mean? But it's fucked up, but it's the reality. You know what I mean? And it's so harsh, you know, to think like how we're I was gonna say programmed, but like how we're like, you know, led to believe that guns are
programming. It is programming. I mean, we are fed this stuff. We are repeatedly shown these things, and I'm not advocating that we need to get rid of violent video games and things like that. It's not that.
Right.
There's a reality that I live in my neighborhood in San Jose, downtown San Jose, and I'll hear gunshots.
Yep.
And I bring the dogs in.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. It's just a reality I've been conditioned to put up with.
Right.
I want to come back to the violence in a second.
Okay.
Because I think it's a great path for the next part. But did this work that you created, this installation, these sculptures, did it help you heal through anything that you yourself experienced?
I would say yes. I would say it was definitely a way to get a story out, you know, like a specific moment in time. It's like yes, but I mean I still got problems. You know what I mean? Like
we all got problems.
I still yeah. I mean, like I have nightmares still. You know what I mean? I hear the gunshots, or like I'll you know, 4th of July I'll hear the fireworks. Like it took so long for me to be like, okay, that's a firework. You know what I mean? Rather than be like, oh shit. You know what I mean? What was that?
Duck,
you know, waking
hide,
up.
Yeah.
What was that? You know what I mean? And now, like to say it healed me. Yeah, it definitely gave me like an avenue to talk about my stories and not have people so worried. Because I remember like trying to come back into society and telling everyone what happened, and I didn't know how to do it. Like it's almost as if I lost my almost lost my charisma. I would say, like, because I used to have a lot of charisma. People used to be like, "Damn, you're a social butterfly. Like, how are you talking to this group and that group and this group?" But like when I came back, it's almost as if I didn't know how to communicate, right? So it was like really hard for me to end a conversation or like talk about what I went through. Because when I did talk about what I went through, people would be like, "I'm so sorry," and I didn't know how to receive that. So,
was it as much that you didn't know how to communicate, or the audience was uncomfortable with the topic?
Oh, it could have been it.
Because I know that, like, I went through cancer in my late 20s, and you say the C word, and everyone goes, "Ooh," and then they're like, "Oh."
Yeah.
And they don't know how to talk about it.
That's
and
true.
so anytime there's something like that and somebody brings it up that, you know, they think it was them and their communication skills, there could have been some of that. But I think the audience, too, has a hard time dealing with the reality. No, you have an excellent point. I mean, that's like with like almost anything is like significant, especially with cancer, right? I mean, that's just like, I'm glad you're okay. You know what I mean? Like, she's like, because
it's just like that pains me, and it's all about like, I guess, empathy. And I guess I just didn't feel like there were certain people who probably weren't as empathetic, but maybe they were. That was the best they can give me, right?
Let's jump to the violence.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the neighborhood you grew up in, violence.
Yeah.
You go off to the Afghan war, there's violence.
Mm-hmm.
Some of your other work, I mean, all of your work is, for me, devastating. And devastating in a great way, because it causes me to face a reality that I don't see every day.
Right.
You did a piece that was the shells, right?
Yeah.
That you made a jacket.
Yeah, la moda americana, I think I called it that, or americana. And so yeah, even that was good. I like that piece a lot, and I always think about like kind of revisiting it, like in terms of getting it the whole way through. But even the way it looks, I think I'm satisfied with it.
So you literally designed a jacket.
Yeah.
That you then sewed together, stitched together, glued together.
Sewed, yeah. I sewed each individual like shell round.
And how many shells were on there?
That's a really great question. I wasn't counting. I was just kind of like,
let's do it this way. How heavy is that bugger?
Oh, how heavy? It was. It was probably like 5 to 10 pounds. I think I would say, just like putting it on. I mean, I have to like hang it with about like 3 hangers just so it doesn't like break. But no, that one had a lot of layers to it. Well,
and it's interesting because I've always enjoyed conversations with you because you use the word layer.
Yeah.
And your work has a lot of layers, which is absolutely true. But when there is something like this that is clearly talking to violence, how does that work get received versus a piece that's got Winnie the Pooh in it?
Yeah. I mean, it gets received a lot differently. I mean, it just does. I mean, yeah, it does, right? I mean, looking back at it and just thinking about how it looked hanging inside of, at the ICA in San Jose, I was like, it was in the back. It totally wasn't. It was. I started to laugh because it's so cynical. Because like it was in the back, and it was in this beautiful pink room, and like I just remember my nopales being in the front, and then the bullet sweater being in the back. Like you have to walk back there just to see it. A lot of people would just be like, "Man, it's so powerful," And I remember James, the director there, he was like, when we were kind of setting it back up, he was like in tears, explaining to me like this, you're such a great artist and like this piece means so much, because a lot of people want to ignore it, you know what I mean? I think we go through our daily lives and and I felt that a lot growing up, right? Whenever I would ever bring something up that was like in high school, I was like on my because I never met white people until high school, right? But man, in high school, I was on them. I'd be like, man, this and this and this. Don't you think about that and that and this? And like they would be like, shut up, dude. Like like it would, for real. Like it would just be like, let's ignore him. And yeah, and so yeah, it gets ignored. So like how it was received poorly, and it's hard to really capture that.
It's interesting, right? Because you said how we put our art out there.
Yeah.
And it's out there.
It's out there. Yeah.
When you get a response like James Leventhal's, where he has been moved to emotion, how does that make you feel? And kind of like, did I do it right?
Yeah.
Am I on the right path?
Yeah. In retrospect, yeah. I mean, like when he told me, I think I was going through my own little mood. I get moody. But I was going through my moods, and so I was just like really, I always look people in the eye, like especially if they're like angry or like crying. So like it made me feel like like I was on the right path. Like what I'm doing is significant, and it's not just like a single entity experience or like a single culture experience. Like it could be black. Now it's like black, Mexican, brown, right? Or like white. It's like it's happening almost all over the world. Like you kind of hear about it on a daily. And it's funny, that we're bringing the sweater up because like when I wrote like this beautiful piece. I wrote this excellent piece, and like, man, like I really like I threw everything into it, right? I was like, man, like thinking about a sweater, right? Like what is a sweater? Something that keeps you warm, something that keeps you so safe, something that, and then thinking about like people who have died wearing these, a black sweater, like did their mom wash it, right? Their mom washed it, got the stain, whatever stains out, put it in the dryer. It probably smells so fresh and so like, it just reminds you of home. Thinking about like a woman's touch, right? And then also now in contrast with this hot machine made, like brass, right? Like attached to it, and how heavy it is compared to the sweater, right? Like you think of like people sewing the sweater together and washing it, right? It's like hands, but then now you're thinking about production, you're thinking about machines pounding and all these noises and stuff like that, and only to think like, man, like my kid might not come home tonight kind of deal, right? Because of these two factions then meet up and it creates like a dead body. Or it's from a Renegade sweater too, and like we wore that a lot. And like the hood and stuff like that. That's all I remember. I remember having like Renegade sweaters, and like they would always fade. They were like from Walmart and things like that. But I remember writing that piece, and like I was so in love with my writing in that piece, and like what I said what I needed to say, and I think I got like a B+ for it. And I was just like, man, that's shady. That was so shady. Like I put my all heart into this, the painstaking of the sewing, the bullets, over drilling the holes into them, collecting them even from a gun range. Right?
Well, didn't you even get in trouble for having the shells in the gallery?
Not the ICA, and
well,
and
it's
like,
funny because they tell us that art has no rules.
Right. Right.
But it does.
It does. In school.
It does in academia.
In academia.
It does in academia.
For sure. And like, I think it's just scary to people. But I also think it's like, again, one of those things where it's like you can't ignore it, because the minute you ignore it, it happens, and then what? And now you're faced with all these like motion.
You're giving them an opportunity to look at a reality that might not be something that's their daily, but at some point in time, they're going to run into someone that is their daily.
Exactly.
Or it will become theirs, God forbid.
Yeah, God forbid, yeah.
With these different pieces, the violence, the area you grew up, the safe environment that you felt in those warm library of this guy's house. How do you balance your art between personal expression and these broader issues that you address with the war piece or the violence with these other pieces?
I mean, man, you're talking about how I found a balance with them and just like my daily kind of life, right? Man, there are times where I find myself thinking that too, man. I mean, I'm like, how do I do it? And when I do, though, I get so down, and I am in therapy. I think I've been in therapy since like 2015, and it's always on and off, but like for sure lately just going a lot more and then thinking about these, things every now and then, right? Like either not friends, but like acquaintances that I see like grow up and then they're gone, they're dead. Or even like a personal friend of mine just like committing suicide. And that happened during the beginning of graduate school, and I was just like hush hush about it because like it kind of hurt. I was kind of mad. You get mad, you get sad, right? You get like, and then you have your really good days, where everything's working out. I'll go to the gym. I'll do that. I try to stay like as fit as possible to kind of mellow everything that happened. But no, I have my problems, man. Like, I just try to keep super calm about it and really think about the things that I'm grateful for. Like, I'm really lucky at the end of the day, like, everything that I survived. And again, yeah, like to balance it, it's daunting, but they live in my work, right? So they're always like something that I can compartmentalize, if I'm saying that right, but like into like stories, that like, this is why I did this. Because I was feeling this way about this particular situation. And that's kind of how it's always been with a lot of my pieces. I'm sorry, I don't know if I answered that right.
Well, no. There's no right or wrong answer. But then does that have your work being therapeutic?
Absolutely. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, it's so therapeutic, especially when I'm talking about these things, and especially when I have time. When I have time to make these things, right? And that's what like grad school really helped me think, especially COVID, I guess. I know everyone hates COVID. I think COVID was a time for thinking and not making, so much. A lot of people were able to make. I wouldn't doubt that. But I think like during COVID, I really sat down with the idea like, yeah, Winnie the Pooh. I wonder what could I do with that?
COVID gave us isolation and gave us loneliness and gave us all of these things that messes with people's mental health.
Yes, it does.
And I realize I'm a different person today than who I thought I was coming into COVID.
Yeah.
And so, it's interesting because art can be therapeutic. It can help us through these things. Your stories are giving us that. And you're also talking about how those pieces have a bit of you in them. Like
Absolutely.
it's your release of this. You're putting that in there.
Right.
What happens when it's not received? Like, let's go back to the Winnie the Pooh and Christopher Robin.
Yeah.
And if that were to be installed again, and it was in a space that you weren't there to walk the audience through, what would your feeling be if it was misconstrued? Like some of the kids that came in and said, "Oh my God, did Pooh just kill Christopher?"
Yeah. I welcome those. I just welcome it. I'm fine with it, because I have no control. It's all whatever people think. It's all on the internet, right? Or like it's all like in the public space. I don't think. Yeah. Again, like I said, I'm happy to let go of things, and also but keep a little bit at the same time, right? Like if someone were to tell me, oh, this is about this and this and this and this, and I'll sit there and listen. I'll be like, yeah.
The work that I do. I don't see it that it's based in the LGBT community. That isn't my mindset. But because I'm in that community, people want to hang that tag on there. Your work feels almost like a gentle activist in a way. Even though you may use the bullets, even though you may use violence is a piece of it. If you were to be labeled activist, is that okay for you? Do you see yourself as an activist?
I can see that. I would say activists are doing a lot more than me. I want to first say that because I know I can only give a piece, but there's activists working like day and day night, it's like losing sleep, like just working for nonprofits, just doing the work, and it's so important. So yeah, so some of it is like very much activist style for sure, because I want to talk about these things. Again, just going back to how would people receive it? I want to have those conversations. I want to be that, I think of it as like doors, right? Like I want to be that open door to those specific conversations of, well, man, I lost a brother to this, and oh man, this is this reminds me of this, and I'm like, oh really? Like tell me more. Because I want to hear your experience, because it's almost a shared experience that we're all having, right? It's like I always bring up that Audre Lorde quote, and it might not be seen as the same as other people, but for me, what I gravitated towards is we do not how did it go? There's no such thing as a single issue struggle because we do not live single issued lives. And how I got that, I was like, man, your problem is my problem. I want to try to figure it out with you. Or I want to at least talk about it with you, because I feel like that just brings us into that connective sphere, of like sharing those empathetic moments, right? Like you talking about cancer, right? Like I'm like, damn, I'm hella happy you're here, you know what I mean? Like, and just like all these things, that people would like to share with me. Yeah, I mean, and it's been around for a while, like the whole therapy thing. I just feel like what I'm presenting is like forgotten knowledge. A lot of the time, I was looking deep into my into research, and just thinking about how Greeks and Romans, they thought, what did they do after the wars? They would have festivities that would showcase actual soldiers, giving theatrical, they were acting out scenes from the war. And so when they were doing that, it was giving the public or the people, the society, a reflection of what they went through. So that way, if they did see them struggling in the streets, it's not that they didn't pay no mind, but they understood. You think about now, right? It wasn't like that, right? Somehow society forgot that, or it's been skewed to a point where Vietnam soldiers were getting spit on, all these things. It wasn't a celebration, but we're ignoring these key factors.
Well, it's like we want to forget what we don't like. And it causes us to be more about our need and not your need. And, it's unfortunate because it causes empathy to start to die. And I think that's where we lose our humanity.
Yep. Definitely use our, yeah. I mean, and funny to say, it's funny, yeah. I mean, like, and I feel so bad for those soldiers who were, they always got spit on. I got spit on once, at a party for just saying, like, oh yeah, I'm a veteran, yeah. Yeah, because, like, one of my friends brought it up, and then, like, they were like, who? And they're like, oh yeah, him. I was like, oh yeah, I was in the Marine Corps. I'm sitting there hitting a joint with a beer in my hand, you know what I mean? And the dude spits on me. And I was just like, what? Like, holy shit, And I just remember, like, my friend being like, hey, man, you tell me what you want to do and we'll do it. And I was like, oh, no, it's fine. I just grabbed, a napkin. I just wiped it off,
And what's wild is that, you, and thank you for your service and your sacrifice that you gave, that the freedoms that we all enjoy in this country, we can continue to enjoy. And I think that's the thing, right? And it's like, well, you need to understand that you as this person needs to understand that you as the soldier aren't the one responsible.
Right. No, absolutely. I mean, it's all, I guess, like, going back to it, yeah, like, we don't know what we're getting ourselves into a lot, I think, and until, like, and I think maybe as a whole society, right? Maybe we all have this, like, cognitive dissonance about, like, ourselves, the history that's led us up to our current event, or to our current time and date or second even living, right? Like, we don't know these things, and, like, when we get reminded, we suddenly, like, we might have an outburst, or, like, we get angry, and that's what you see a lot with, like, a bunch of college kids, right? It's like, they're in this, like, nice little bubble at home. They're, like, in high school having the time of their lives, and they love it, and then they go to college and they read about, like, the patriarch, and then it's like, fuck it, time to shave my head, you know what I mean? Which is cool. Like, yeah, do your thing, because that's how you're going to get out. So.
Well, and it's interesting because, I've made some pieces that they come to me and they're like, are you okay?
Yeah.
Are you angry?
Yes.
And I'm like,
yes.
You realize that every piece I make isn't an autobiography.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are some of my works that are absolutely that. But many of them, most of them, are not.
Right.
They are like what you're doing. They are stories in reality that may have been forgotten, that no one has remembered or have heard. And being able as an artist to come in and make sure that story stays out there is really important.
I always try to do, like, art pieces too, where it's like, one for you, one for me. But, like, there's always, like, me, and then here's you, and then me. But sometimes it might be you. Here's, and by you, I mean, like, here's this for society, like, it has nothing to do with me. But, like, it's almost hard to kind of, I mean, we could get all philosophical about it, right? It's like, well, everything is about you personally before it comes out because, A, B, C, D, E. But, like, even with, like, my art piece, like the screwball, when I made that, I think I was so angry with, like, I think the education system and, like, my academia. They were always telling me research and then make, and I was like, I just want to make. Can I just make and then research it later? And they're like, no. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna make a screw going through a ball because I just imagined that the other day, and I was like, I want to see it in physical form. And man, when I made it, I was like, screwball. You know what I mean? Like, that's yes. And then the thoughts came after, right?
I was lucky enough to actually curate that into a show.
Which
was amazing because here, literally, it's a sculpture. It's this precious, it's in an acrylic box. It's like a collectible.
Yes.
And it is a baseball with a screw through it.
Yeah.
So what came to you after?
What came after that was just this whole idea of people were like, oh, it's like play, because it's like playing baseball. But just like thinking about the history, of course, with baseball, it's America's pastime. It's like, it's still going on to this day. And, just thinking about that culture. Yeah, I thought about baseball. What else did I think about? The drink screwball. I thought about the actual throw a screwball and how that kind of just like, it just, it's just a nasty. It's so nasty. Like, you see it, and it just goes up and it just down. Like, and you're like, whoa, what the hell just happened? And it's like something so particular.
Well, and it's the sort of piece, too, that you were making a commentary with it. I mean, it's clear you were making a commentary.
Oh, yeah.
But I loved that it was an open-ended commentary and that it could have been interpreted 50 different ways.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
It was such a great piece. I loved that piece.
It was. Yes. I still have it too. It's like it's on my desk, and I always look at it, and I'm like, yeah.
But that was the thing, right? There's these objects that get created, and I think it was brilliant on your part that it's the size of a baseball.
Yeah.
And we have these people in our society that collect these signed baseballs. I have like 3 of them.
Yeah.
And they're in these acrylics, and they're on this place of, honor.
Yes.
And we look at it, and you've got it on your desk, and you're looking at it.
Yeah.
And I think that's marvelous.
Yeah, right on. No, yeah, thank you.
John, thank you. We have been all over the place tonight, and I think it's been great. But I want to close off with this.
Yeah.
If there's somebody that's out there that has traumas, that has maybe something they need therapy with, do you have any words of advice for them how art can play for them, maybe similar to what it did for you?
Yeah, I would say just go right into it. I mean, like art, however you're feeling, in a particular moment, either create that art piece or just get into the arts, because I feel like the arts have such an open community. I mean, you get everyone, you get everyone in the arts, and it doesn't like exclude you. It might exclude your particular art making, but like it's definitely not going to exclude you. You don't be afraid to just just make art, man. Make art, and you don't have to be so specific. Like, there's plenty of artists out there who say, I make art for everyone. And there's other artists who are like, I make artwork about immigrants in the fields that are making our food. And that's so important, and you're like, damn, like that's, and even if you want to make art for everyone, that's totally fine too. You just got to find your path. Your path is going to go all haywire at first, and you're going to get uncomfortable. You might lose a couple hair follicles, that I've lost somehow. You might gray out a little bit, but at the end of the day, I mean, you're going to be an artist, and I would say just create it and share it, so that way people, or even just keep it to yourself, and then maybe someone might find it later down,
Puts it out there in the world.
Puts it out there in the world, and go to therapy, and whether that therapy be like, your friend or your colleague at work, or religion or baseball. Go to a baseball game and chop it up with somebody, right? You really get to find out more about yourself the more you open yourself out into the world.
Well, John, thank you. I appreciate the time.
Thank you. I appreciate you, for sure.
Thank you for joining us for this moving episode of Lattes Art, presented by J Squared Atelier. A big thank you to John Joseph Contreras Romero for his powerful insights into how art can serve as both a reflection and a remedy for trauma. We hope this conversation inspired you to think about the ways art can heal, whether it's on canvas, in a sketchbook, or simply through creative expression in your daily life. If you or someone you know is struggling with mental health challenges or thoughts of suicide, please know that you are not alone. We've included links to helpful resources in the episode notes. Don't hesitate to reach out. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us for more discussions on the intersection of life and creativity. Until the next time, stay curious, stay inspired, and keep creating.